Hi, everyone, and welcome to Studio Jake. I, of course, am your host, Jacob Airy. Bear with me for these first few moments while I make sure that everything is working properly, that everything is streaming and sharing out the way it should. These live shows are a lot of fun, but sometimes they're a little bit of work. But I love doing it. I love having fun with you guys. I love coming on and talking about these topics. And for this end of the year, I'm kind of combining my Christmas with my New Year's since they since Christmas is kind of falling on a Sunday. I always take off between Christmas and in February, although I don't usually take the whole month of January off, but it's a lot of I just need, just to give myself a breather, take a every once in a while. So we are streaming live on um, live on YouTube, Getter, and Facebook. So that is really cool. I really love that we can do this with technology these days. It's a lot of fun. I think that being able to see the the fruits of your labor go not just on one platform but on several is a lot of fun. So Merry Christmas. Tomorrow is Christmas Eve. If you're married into a Mexican family like I am, you celebrate Christmas on Christmas Eve. But hey, that's great. That means you get to open presents a day early and also get some very tasty horchata while you are at it. I'm looking forward to that tomorrow. Let me know what if you have any cool Christmas traditions that that your family does. Please let me know. I would drop it in the chat or in the comments below. I would love to hear what everyone's favorite Christmas tradition is, and also New Year's. Happy New Year's early. I know that this is going just a little bit early for folks, but you do what you got. You do what you got to do. Um, Anyway, this is going to be a whole lot of fun. I really hope you uh, that you enjoy what we're going to be talking about today. So, before we get started, which by the way, today I'm going to be talking about um, franchises that have been destroyed by their corporate overlords, by the very people we thought were supposed to, uh, take care of them and watch over them. But then they ended up destroying them. Now, one of the unique things about my list is actually the first three. I'm doing topics, or I should say, um, I'm doing 3 franchises that I'm actually a total, normie in, which is kind of rare for me. Normally, I only like to stick to franchises that I know, but I'm doing it this way today because of the simple reason that I want to show that this isn't just something that affects me in particular, but but is a big deal that affects across the board, no matter what franchise you're into. This is something that affects us all, and I think that these franchises do that. But before I dive into that, because I'm going to be talking a little bit about The Witcher, which again, I'm a total normie on when it comes to The Witcher. But one of the things that I hear about is, of course, Henry Cavill has left the show. He got tired, him being a fan of The Witcher video games and books. He played the main character uh, for it'll be 3 years. But then he opted to leave the show because he didn't like the direction it was going, creative differences. There was one of the Netflix writers planted a story that he was difficult to deal with. And that, of course, not true. But and then also he got fired from being Superman because of a terrible decision by James Gunn, Peter Safran, and the new head of Warner Brothers Studios, Peter Zaslav. A lot of people are trying to defend James Gunn. I think he's just as culpable. He took over. I know he's kind of late stage. He took over late in the game, but I still think he holds, some sort of blame for this. But with Henry Cavill, good news. He's a huge fan of a tabletop game called Warhammer. I think 40,000, Warhammer 40,000. Let me know in the chat if I got that incorrect. But again, I'm a total normie on that. I have no idea what Warhammer is, but he is actually going to executive produce a TV show based on that tabletop franchise. I think they have some novels and video games as well, and he has assured fans that he's going to take it very, very seriously. So I'm really excited for him. He does. I actually liked. Now everyone knows I am a huge critic of the Snyderverse. I did not like it, but I've always praised Henry Cavill as Superman. I just thought he got a really lousy really lousy script, basically. Him and Amy Adams. I liked her as Lois Lane. They were good casting decisions. But oh, Jester Bell is in the chat. Go follow her on Twitter and here on YouTube. She does besides commentary, she also does short films. She says, "I hate James Gunn, but I think he's just enacted what other people at WB want to happen." That certainly is possible, but I still think he has some culpability. He's the head of the studios, dang it. He should be able to do something. And I know he's the new kid on the block, but still, his stuff made money. He should be able to use that as, sort of a bending. But I could be wrong. I could be wrong about that. James, and also he's kind of a perv. Look him up. This guy is definitely a perv. As far as I can tell, he's never done anything illegal, but yeah, he's kind of a weirdo. But anyway, so we'll get started. Top 10 destroyed franchises. So hang on one second. Sorry for this awkwardness. So up first, we have The Witcher. So I just mentioned The Witcher. Now, again, this is a franchise I'm a total normie on. I don't know a whole lot about it. I've never read the books. I've never played the games. I've never watched the show. But going by what others have told me about everything that has happened, it is clear that they wanted to try to pull the franchise away from the hero of the story and make it more about a bunch of sub characters. Of course, that's going to be the girl sub characters because that's the way these things work. I know a lot of people are angry about how Netflix portrayed some of those characters, and I know one of the reasons Cavill was mad was because they wanted to take, I guess, the main character's horse is an important character in the show, and they were going to kill it off in a very comedic way, and he threatened to quit right there if they didn't rewrite the scene. So good for him for sticking to his guns, by the way. But it just seems like they don't have any compassion for the fans. They don't have any passion for the source material. I think one of the former writers was hired by Marvel to work on the upcoming sequel to X-Men, the reboot of the 90s X-Men animated series. And he basically said that if you were a fan of the series, you weren't welcome as a writer. In fact, it was almost like a badge of honor if you weren't. So number 10 is The Witcher. And number 2, we have He-Man, Masters of the Universe. And of course, Kevin Smith redid this as a Masters of the Universe Revelation, where in the very first episode, he kills off He-Man and replaces him with, I think, Teela, who in the show is kind of He-Man's love interest. And it kind of splits from there. I've actually heard that fans of He-Man were so angry at the series that they were watching the one in the 2000s. And again, this is a franchise I'm a total normie on. I only know what I've heard from other YouTubers. I think I just watched like a couple of episodes of the early 2000s show when I was growing up. It wasn't on my radar. I'm not saying it's bad. It just wasn't a show on my radar. So Kevin Smith, of course, I have to throw this in. I write for Clownfish TV, in full disclosure, and he called them liars. They had gotten a leak basically describing the show. Kevin Smith called them liars. He said this didn't happen. And then, of course, it did happen. but instead of just owning it, he continued to double down. He owes Clownfish TV. Now, I would like to be clear about something. I have been warning about Kevin Smith ever since Batman Cacophony. That series and then its sequel, The Widening Gyre, whatever it is, those are two of the worst Batman comic books ever written, hands down. Even worse than the stuff Tom King has put out. That might be stretching it, but you get what I'm saying. It's just garbage. And after that, I warn people, hey, Kevin Smith is not one of us. He's no different than these sort of woke people. He's a grifter. And I was telling people this, no one would listen. Everyone's like, no, no, Kevin Smith is one of us. Oh, look, he does this. But then when Last Jedi came out, when Masters of the Universe Revelation came out, when he was crying at Black Panther Wakanda Forever, it just doesn't make any sense. Jason Wagaspak. I hope I pronounced that. Apologies if I want. He says, I grew up with the 80s He-Man series and also watched the 2002 He-Man show. The 2002 series was great, truly faithful to the Motu universe. Shame it got axed after 2 seasons. Oh, there you go. Like I said, I think that's the only show I watched, and I think I only saw like the pilot, maybe part 1 and part 2. And again, not because I think He-Man is terrible. It just wasn't ever on my radar. But one thing I have heard that is there's a kids He-Man cartoon that's more of a cyberpunk show that fans of the old series are starting to watch because they're so disappointed in Revelations. So we'll just have to see. So number 8 is another series that I'm a normie on, but again, I feel like this one just has so much impact, especially not just in one country, but 2, that I felt like I needed to talk about it. And again, apologies for the awkward reach that I have to do, and that's Doctor Who. So I've actually heard from people that Doctor Who was kind of starting to wane in popularity around the time of the 12th Doctor, who was played by Peter Capaldi. And it wasn't that Peter Capaldi. Now, again, I'm hearing this from other YouTubers, so bear with me. Peter Capaldi, it wasn't that they didn't like him as the Doctor. It was just that the writing wasn't that good at that time. Moffat was writing it, and Moffat was kind of distracted because he was working on a couple of other shows. He was working on Sherlock. He helped create Sherlock. And so that could have had something to do with it. But with this 13th Doctor, they went full woke. They replaced action scenes with full on exposition dumps, people talking about privilege and they kept doing what they call queer baiting with the Doctor and one of her companions. When the 13th Doctor, played by Jodie Whittaker, who Neurotic calls Dr. Karen, they were kind of doing that with her, and they brought in like all the woke political pandering that turned a lot of fans off. I know a lot of people weren't impressed with Jodie Whittaker's performance. I've never seen her in anything, not Doctor Who, not nothing like I said. I've never even watched a single episode of Doctor Who, but I felt like because this series has such a cultural standing, both in the United States and in the United Kingdom, I felt like I should at least comment on it because this was so big. I think that, like I said, it's so bad that they actually brought back an older Doctor, who I think he was the 11th Doctor, if I'm not mistaken, but they brought him back for a couple of specials before they transition into the 14th Doctor. But a lot of people are. Oh, I'm sorry. It was. Oh, I had it. I'm a little confused. I'm sorry. They brought back the 10th Doctor, not the 12th. The 10th Doctor, who is of course, played by David Tennant, who now I have seen David Tennant act. He is a brilliant actor. I also liked him in the reboot of DuckTales. I thought he did a great job voicing Scrooge McDuck in that one. But anyway, we'll see how it goes. They're going to bring in a black actor to play the Doctor. and this will be apparently they want to do first for Doctor Who, so they're doing the first female Doctor who is of course also a lesbian, and then now they're bringing in a black doctor. And I've not seen this new actor who's coming, who's going to be the 14th Doctor. For all I know, he's a great actor. I'm sure he is, but we'll have to see if. Well, they also brought back. Oh, what's his name? I can't remember, but they also brought back one of the early modern, one of the guy who rebooted Doctor Who for the United Kingdom. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see where this goes. But anyway, on to the next one with my awkward reach. So next is Rugrats. So this one hurts to me. They did Rugrats too soon. So basically, in the 90s, I loved the Rugrats. I thought the Rugrats. I watched it from beginning to end. I saw the movies. I even saw their dumb crossover with the Wild Thornberries. I'm a huge Rugrats fan. It was a show that me and my sister watch religiously. We loved it a great deal. And even my parents got into it because a lot of the adults would say things that went over my head as a kid, and then when I would watch them as an adult, I'm like, oh, that was kind of an adult joke there. They had some double entendres here and there every once in a while, or discussing what it was like being a parent and all this, and it would go over my head as a kid. But oh, and we've got Pixie Ray, who is my producer and one of my moderators. She says my favorite show after kindergarten class. LOL. Alex Dell, grateful for you, Jake. You're the man. Merry Christmas. Thank you, Alex. I appreciate that. Merry Christmas to you. Cheers. And right back to Rugrats. With this reboot, what they did is they took Phil and Lil's dad and basically erased him from existence. So Phil and Lil had kind of a weird family dynamic, whereas most of the kids had more traditional parents, with Chucky having a single dad. Obviously, his wife, he was a widower, but with Phil and Will, they kind of had the opposite. So their mom was more of a tomboy, more masculine, kind of a gym rat. Is that what you call a female bodybuilder? Or well, she wasn't a bodybuilder, but you know what I mean. She visited the gym a lot, and then their dad was kind of this small kind of effeminate man. And well, with this new show, they just completely deleted the dad, Phil and Lil's dad, totally, and they made it where their mom was just is a lesbian. Which I don't get why they did that. And also, one of the things was, in the original show, the grandpa was a war veteran. He was very serious, although sometimes that would lead to goofy antics. Well, now in this new show, their grandpa is a hippie. He didn't go to the war. He protested the war. He's got a ponytail because we can't have heroism these days. We have to have lazy bum grandpas. We can't have grandpas who serve their country with honor and dignity. Dang it! So that's one reason I put this one on this list. You'll start to notice a little bit of a pattern with some of these franchises. So up next we have Star Trek. Now this one hurts. Um, and Pixie Ray cuts in. Women can be less feminine without being lesbian. Tomboys exist. And she has an emoji. Yes, absolutely right. 100% correct. So anyway, on to Star Trek. Now, I was willing to give Star Trek Discovery a chance because the special effects in it are pretty good. I have to give them that. But after 2 seasons of it, I couldn't take it anymore. It's just what it took everything that was good about Star Trek and basically took a dump on it, flushed it down the toilet. So Star Trek, if you watch the original series, Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, Enterprise, and even some of the films, even some of the bad films, it's all about there's hope. There's humanity has transcended past its hatred and its more violent tendencies, and now we've become Starfleet. We've grasped on even Star Trek First Contract, which is I'm sorry, First Contact. Which okay, yes, I know it's a Next Generation movie, and not and the Next Generation films, including including Generations and Insurrection. Those two felt more like two-part Star Trek episodes than films, and Nemesis was just terrible. Yes, I get all that. But First Contact is a good movie. I don't care what anyone says. I will debate them. I will argue with them. The Borg are, besides probably the Romulans and the Klingons, they're probably one of the greatest Star Trek villains ever created. And in Star Trek Discovery and in Star Trek Picard, they just flood it with all of with 21st century sensibilities and a 24th century and a show about the 24th century. It doesn't make any sense. It's dumb, it's stupid. We've gotten past everything. And but in Star Trek Discovery, especially, they hit the reset button, and then they hit the reset button again in Star Trek Picard, which is past Star Trek Discovery. It makes no sense, and you can tell, especially Discovery was just made to be pandering. It's not really made to. It might as well be a propaganda show. I mean, they gave Stacey Abrams, a failed political candidate, a cameo as the president of Earth. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard of my life. Like, Star Trek had real life people give cameos. Stephen Hawking's uh, famously had a cameo in an episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation. But but again, why Stacey Abrams, and why have her play like such an important role in Star Trek Discovery? It makes no sense. It was dumb. It was forced. And you know, I'm really disappointed, because one thing I did like about Star Trek Discovery season 2, even though it wasn't really that good, was Anson Mount as Christopher Pike. They did a really good job of making Christopher Pike. But basically, the premise of season 2 is Star Trek or is the Starship Enterprise is on a mission. It gets damaged, so Captain Pike is given command of the Discovery while the Enterprise is being repaired, so he can complete his mission. And then, of course, Spock, who they totally ruin in that show, makes cameo number 1, makes an appearance, and then the Enterprise comes in the finale, and then they do this really dumb way of like boxing up all the stuff that would affect Next Generation, because it has to be, you know, weird. But anyway, yeah, I'm very disappointed in that. It actually ruined me for Strange New Worlds. I'm not even going to touch the animated shows, especially Lower Decks. That was just hot garbage. That was a waste of film space and digital space. It was a waste of my time. So I reviewed season 1 of Lower Decks. Feel free to go back and look that. So Jason's back. I remember the first time I saw a picture of the Klingworks online. That was my first tip off that trouble was coming. Yes, in Star Trek Discovery season 1, the Klingons look more like orcs. They look nothing like Klingons. It was now in season 2 they tried to backtrack it, where they had the Klingons grow their hair out. So they're like, oh, the Klingons grew their hair back. That's why they look so normal now. Please, we see through you, New York City. That's not Hollywood. That's New York. So yeah, I honestly don't have any hope for Star Trek. I think that Star Trek is probably a lost cause at this point, unless there's like a major shakeup at Paramount. So on to the next one. This is the MCU, or as it is now known as the MCU. So at the beginning of Phase 4, I was kind of hesitant to call it the MCU, because I actually don't have a problem with female superheroes. I know there's some guys out there that, you know, kind of they get their ire up a little bit about it. And then there's the opposite spectrum of people are like, no, boys are loud. But but Phase 4, and it looks like Phase 5, it does seem like they wanted to, or it's not. It doesn't seem like, it is obvious that they want to destroy all their male characters and replace them with snobby, bratty, condescending, jerkish females. And what's so sad too is they're taking female superheroes that could have been good and just totally wreck them. So, um, you know, and I know this is a controversial take. It started with Logan, and woke wasn't really a word back when Logan came out. And I know Logan is not part of the MCU, but it was a part of the Fox X-Men franchise. Logan took two iconic male superheroes, watered them down into these pasty old men, and then gave all the cool scenes to a spoiled brat little girl that they based that wasn't even originally from the comic books. X-23 was originally from X-Men Evolution. She was cool in that show, and Logan turned her into this little girl that probably just needed a spanking. And it was, and I know, oh, but Jacob, the acting was so good, and the cinematography, and James Mangold, and it was bullcrap. Okay, yeah, and again, I'll be happily debate that one, and that leaked into the MCU. Now, with Chadwick Boseman passing away, I actually didn't really have a problem with Shuri taking over as Black Panther. In fact, pre-woke Marvel days, Shuri did briefly become the Black Panther. So I was kind of like, okay, and I actually didn't really have a problem with Carol Danvers becoming Captain Marvel. I thought, oh, what they're going to do is they'll make her like the Earth Captain Marvel, and then Marvel will be the leader in space, and he'll become Captain Marvel and all this. Wrong. They didn't even include Marvel. They totally destroyed that character and pretended like he just didn't exist. And Captain Marvel, the original one, and Carol Danvers as Miss Marvel are two of the best pairings in the comic books. And I was so disappointed with how they handled it. And we see this leaked in. Right now, I have a poster of the Eternals. Of course, the straight, white, powerful dude who can fly is going to be the bad guy. Spoiler alert. Besides the fact that that film is just boring, it's almost 3 hours of a yawn fest. But of course, you could almost calculate how terrible it was going to be based on the runtime alone. And we see this time and time again, right? We saw this with She-Hulk, with Hawkeye, which I refuse to watch Hawkeye because I want Clint Barton to be Hawkeye. I don't get why, which I get maybe the actor Jeremy Renner, I guess maybe his contract is coming up. Offer him a new contract or just slowly go away. Or just let him slowly fade into the sunset. Who cares? Now, but Jacob, they're going to introduce Black Knight pretty soon. Who cares? They'll probably just make him a bumbling oaf like they did with Winter Soldier. It was embarrassing how they handled Bucky in that TV show. Come on now. I mean, really. It's and it's just mind blowing what they're doing with their male characters, with these strong, good male characters. Nothing wrong with uplifting the female characters, but if you're going to do it right. They turned Captain Marvel into the snarky, condescending jerk. They turned She-Hulk into a condescending, arrogant imbecile. She is an imbecile in the show. She just, and also it's clear those writers don't know anything about writing about for a trial. Pixie Ray says Sailor Moon supremacy, femininity, and sparkles. No taking over men's spaces. Too busy fighting evil by moonlight for that. Exactly. That's a really great point. I could go on for this. Marvel. See, I've always said Batman is my favorite superhero. I've got a thing of his, a blown up version of the first cover he ever appeared in. But if Batman was Marvel, I would be all Marvel. I mainly read Marvel comics besides Batman, a few Superman and Wonder Woman sprinkled in there, but mainly Batman and Marvel comics was my jam. And I think that it's sort of sad to see Marvel take some of their greatest male superheroes and turn them into, dummies and idiots, but then try to up and at the they're doing that so they can lift up their female superheroes, but then they don't make with the exception of Shuri. I did think Wakanda Forever made Shuri a likable character, but I felt like the movie was kind of a missed opportunity. I don't think they should have killed off T'Challa. I think that they should have recasted him. I think they should have held off. And to me, the box office performance of Wakanda Forever kind of proved that to me. They should have waited, had the recasted actor appear in a new Avengers movie, and then done Wakanda Forever. And also how they destroyed Namor in that movie. It's just an embarrassment. They should fire all the writers who were involved with that. So moving on to the next one. All right. So now the DCEU. Now this might change with James Gunn in charge. Doubtful, but the Snyderverse was a woke mess. You had a Superman is supposed to represent hope, and they do kind of reference it in Man of Steel, but no. Then he just goes to being this angsty teenager who had like a really bad father. One of the most terrible things, in my opinion, about the Justice League, the Snyderverse Justice League in particular, was, or just that franchise, I'm saying, was how they made Jonathan Kent. In all versions of Jonathan Kent, he is a good father who, yes, he doesn't want his son's powers to be exposed, but he doesn't go to the part where he berates his son for saving his classmates from drowning. What an absolute monster they turned Jonathan Kent in. I really feel bad for oh, now I'm going to forget the actor's name who played him, because he had an opportunity to play such an iconic character, the person who made Superman, the Man of Steel, truth, justice in the American way. And they made him almost into this ambivalent, nihilistic um, character who turns Superman into that. And we saw that also with the continuation, Batman versus Superman, how Batman is reduced to being a Punisher knockoff and then cries about his mommy with Superman. No one wants to see Kevin Costner. Thank you. Thank you, Jason. Kevin Costner, who played Jonathan Kent. Um, no one wants to see Batman and Superman cry about their mommies together. No one wants to see that. I remember I got into this really interesting, debate with someone because they were saying that I was like being a misogynist for saying that. No, I'm not. These heroes are not supposed to represent my real life. They're supposed to be people that I aspire to be. That they are a legend. They're a modern myth. And so to reduce them to save Martha, what an embarrassment. That's so that the and I don't care what anyone says, even if you like the Snyderverse, and Zack Snyder's a hack. I'm just gonna get that out of the way. Even if you like Zack Snyder, even though he makes Ed Wood look like a filmmaking genius, um, even if you like him, there is no way you like that scene. What infantile, amateurish, rookie written, not even consistent with the story they set up 5 minutes before. It makes no freaking sense. And no, Ben Affleck is a terrible Batman. Maybe if he had a better director, he would have been a good Batman, but no, he's not. He was just the Punisher with the Batman mask. Embarrassment. Pixie Ray says, Martha! Yep, that's exactly right. Martha! Martha! What that is one of the worst, dumbest scenes of any DC film. From the get go, it was political pandering. It was watering down male heroes so we could uplift the female ones. And we saw this, with Wonder Woman, right? Patty Jenkins, the first Wonder Woman, fantastic. Aquaman, I loved it. I know a lot of people don't like that movie. I thought it was fun. Yes, Amber Heard is not a nice person. But I thought Aquaman was good. I thought Wonder Woman was good. Pixie Ray, you're gonna make people upset with that take. LOL. Don't care. Yes, Amber Heard is a terrible human being, but the first Aquaman, I had fun with it. I thought it was a fun movie. It was kind of like the Fast and Furious of movies, and it's still up in the air whether the Shazam films are even a part of the DCEU. So, take what you want that. But Wonder Woman 1984, which was supposed to be a midquel, that was that woke garbage. And everyone's like, and this is my whole thing is Zack Snyder gets kind of a vague story credit for Wonder Woman. Okay, maybe it's not vague, maybe he helped a little bit with the story. And so because people are kind of mad at Patty Jenkins right now because of her political pandering, then which I'm upset about that too. But then they're like, oh, Zack Snyder was the secret genius behind Wonder Woman. Okay, well, he produced Wonder Woman 1984. So why does he get all the credit for the success of the first Wonder Woman, but none of the blame for Wonder Woman 1984? come on, guys, and I actually do think Patty Jenkins is a good director, but I think she got caught up in sort of the girl power movement. Now, for all I know, her script for Wonder Woman, or her treatment for Wonder Woman 3, was garbage. But let's just remember what Zack Snyder wanted to do. Zack Snyder's original idea for a sequel for Wonder Woman was her getting involved in a war in the Middle East and chopping people's heads off. So let's just keep that in mind. And I'm not saying Wonder Woman isn't above that. She's a warrior. She certainly has killed villains in the past. So that's part of her lore. But come on. No one wants to see Wonder Woman vaporize an entire man, a man, and destroy an entire building in front of children. No one wants to see that. Come on, let's be real. So moving on, the next one, and this is one. This is another one that it's personal for me. This is Transformers. So, I did a video on the upcoming film Transformers: Rise of the Beast, and I thought it looked good. And then the director has to open his big trap. I don't know what it is with these directors where they have to feel like they have to pander. Ryan Coogler, who by the way is an excellent director, I love Ryan Coogler's films, but when they open up their mouths and they start doing the political pandering, it makes me not want to see it. And that's what's happening with Transformers. He wants to, instead of making it a story, the current director, his name escapes me, but the guy who wants to direct, or who is directing Rise of the Beast, he made this comment about, "Oh, we're going to tell a Latino story." And I'm like, "Okay, I have no problem with Latino characters in Transformers. There were in the 1980s cartoon. Remember Raul? He was, the a friend of Trax and Blaster. He made several appearances in the 1980s cartoon. Okay, fine. They could. I actually would love to see him on screen, but why do you got to make it like, no? This should be a story about giant robots transforming and punching each other. And then again, I have Nickelodeon here because they did Earthspark, where of course they have to do this thing where they have a non-binary robot. So, the this was actually started by IDW. IDW's editors and writers were garbage. Now they had some pretty good artists, but they were trying to inject politics into the Transformers, inject ideology into them, especially the transing stuff. It was so dumb. It made no freaking sense. Now, in the original cartoon, it established that the Autobots had binaries, so that there were male Autobots and female Autobots, and no female Decepticons, because not for procreation purposes, because how the Transformers were created are through sparks released through Vector Sigma, which is at the planet core, what they call the Allspark now. So with Marvel Comics came in and they sort of did away with that. They said the Autobots don't have a gender. They're totally genderless robots because they're robots. They don't have a gender. And then Dreamwave Comics kind of copied this. Simon Furman, and so it just so happened if the Autobot looked more masculine or looked more feminine, then their human counterparts would kind of refer to them as he or she or whatever. So I don't know why they just didn't do that if they wanted to make some sort of political grand statement. But no, we got to brainwash the children, right? Which, Earthspark is a kids show. And, I think that while because of IDW Comics in particular, we're going to see more of that. Fortunately, IDW Comics has lost the licensing to do Transformers comics. I actually hope Titan Comics gets Transformers, but it's looking more like it might be another company. The reason I say Titan Comics is because Simon Furman or I don't know if he is now, but prior to the code, he was working on them with Robotech. So hopefully, if he's still, on their payroll, maybe if they get Transformers, we can bring back Simon Furman because his stuff was iconic. The work he did for Transformers, Marvel, and Dreamwave, just chef's kiss. What he did for the Transformers community and for the lore. So down to the top three now. Rings of Power. Or I'm sorry, last two. That was Transformers was number 3. Number 2 is Rings of Power, and all of you know, I love the stories of Middle Earth. I love J.R.R. Tolkien, and you can't really see it from the camera angle now, but I actually have Baron and the Tale of Baron and Luthien. I have the complete Lord of the Rings in a hardback binding. My wife actually bought it for me. My super cute wife, as I like to call her, she actually got it for me for a birthday present. Both of them, and it's something I really appreciate. I love both of those things. As a fantasy writer myself, J.R. Tolkien is top notch. But then once again, Amazon, they get the rights to a title, and they inject modern politics into a story about a fantasy world. And in this case, like normally when a corporate overlord gets a franchise like this, I don't really blame the actors for for engaging in this. Actors are, not always that bright to begin with, and they kind of just uh, will repeat lines, and so I kind of try to let that go. But with the cast of the Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power, they were embarrassingly, mind-numbingly dumb with their comments. I mean, it's like I don't even think half of them read the books. What made the Peter Jackson trilogy so great, and even the first Hobbit movie, I defend the first Hobbit movie. Okay, yes, I know the trilogy should have been 3 movies, and the Battle of the Five Armies is super long, and then they stretched it out, blah 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 blah. Yes, I get all that. But what made it so special is Peter Jackson wanted to present it in a way that he thought Tolkien would be appreciated. Of course, his son Christopher Tolkien didn't like them, but it's his dad. I get it. I understand. I get that. My dad is a fan of my works, so I know. I hope that my dad will gatekeep my stuff, and vice versa. My dad has written a book. I'll gatekeep for his works as well. So keep that in mind. My sister is an artist. I'll gatekeep for her artwork. My wife is an artist. I'll gatekeep for her artwork. Absolutely, that's what family does. Happy to do it. So but still, Peter Jackson still tried to maintain the meaning, the purpose, what gave those stories depth. Rings of Power, if it had not been Lord of the Rings, I could see how Rings of Power could have had an audience, just being kind of a generic fantasy fiction. But they didn't do that. They took Galadriel, who was a woman of grace, of beauty, of wisdom, and they turned her into a snarky, condescending jerk. In the first episode, she's been given a command of, even though in the books Galadriel, she only participated in one battle in all of her history. She is in the first episode, she's given command of this troop, and they're searching for Sauron. Of course, they can't find him, and her troops mutiny against her. And the show's trying to present it as, oh, these mean orcs, or these mean elves, why are they betraying Galadriel? Oh, bad elves. But if I was on her troop, I would have abandoned her too. Holy cow, she's so mean. She was willing to sacrifice them to a cave troll, a snow troll, whatever it was called, an ice troll. Come on now. Yes, of course, I would have abandoned her. But now, fortunately, Tolkien's work is so classic, I think it'll endure past the Rings of Power. But I'll have more on that a little bit later. But still, let's go on to number 1. So hopefully this is my last awkward, or I'll have one more last. Pixie says they ruined her. I'm assuming by her, even Galadriel, 100%. So lastly is Star Wars. Now, Star Wars is actually kind of interesting because there seems to be a civil war in Lucasfilms ever since Disney got a hold of it. So firstly, you have the Kathleen Kennedy, who was handpicked by Bob Iger and placated by Bob Chapek. And she betrayed George Lucas. He picked her to be his successor, and she just totally stabbed him in the back. And I think that this messed things up. So that's why we get stuff like Solo. Solo lost money because they went through something like 3 directors before they finally landed on Ron Howard, who did his best to salvage it. We get things like Obi-Wan Kenobi, which, oh, Jacob, he has PTSD. He's a Jedi Master. Okay. Get it together, man. They were, again, reducing Obi-Wan Kenobi to who was one of the greatest Jedi Masters to ever live into this scaredy cat who has to take orders from a spoiled little brat. What is with this thing where they want to make men weak and then the women act like spoiled brats? It's so embarrassing. But so we get things like that, but then we also have Filoni and Favreau, and we get things like The Mandalorian, like Star Wars Visions, like Andor. We get the good stuff, but it just feels Bad Batch, the last season of the Clone Wars, all good stuff. But then it seems like we get like these also awful things, like how they rewrote Boba Fett, how and things like Tales of the Jedi, which I haven't watched, but I've heard it's very mediocre. It's not really that impressive. Just again, they're playing it safe. And again, we get Solo, we get The Last Jedi, we get The Rise of Skywalker, The Force Awakens. We get all this nonsense, and so the good of it, it makes gets bleeded out. I talked about this when I did my Andor review. Is people were so turned off by Obi-Wan Kenobi in particular that they didn't come back to watch Andor, even though Andor is actually a pretty good show. Yes, it's a little slow, but it's actually a pretty good show. I don't agree with this idea that we can't do shows based on characters that were killed off. I don't agree with that. As long as it fits in with the canon and the lore, I don't really have a problem with it. I just want it to be good. That's my opinion on that. So last awkward stretch. But and this is one of the things that I wanted to talk about. Like I kind of touched on this with Lord of the Rings, is with new fans coming up who are demanding these changes because these companies, Paramount, Disney, Warner Brothers, all Amazon Studios, they're demanding all these changes to characters that they didn't grow up with loving. Whenever I was older, so I grew up watching Batman the Animated Series, and later I watched The Batman, and then of course Justice League Unlimited, but Batman the Brave and the Bold. I grew up watching those shows, which were good, in varying degrees. But then they did this show that was just terrible called Beware the Batman. Now, my understanding was Cartoon Network at that time, they were doing Beware the Batman. They were doing a Green Lantern show. They were supposed to do a Superman and a Wonder Woman show, and then they were going to do the Justice League. So, but Beware the Batman and Green Lantern were so poorly received that they just gave up. Beware the Batman ended after 2 seasons, I think, and I think Green Lantern ended after 1. And but Gen Z comes along and they see clips of these shows because they're available on HBO Max or on some other streaming service, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, that's the greatest thing ever!" And it's like, no, it's not. Batman the Animated Series, even though it was made in the 90s and the early 2000s, is leaps and bounds better than Beware the Batman. And even the animation, so Jacob, Beware the Batman is CGI. Batman the Animated Series is classic animation. Yes. Your point? 2D animation is superior to CGI, and I'll stand by that. And also, too, it's just not true. These stories, I used to be against gatekeeping fandoms because I saw it as, hey, let's be polite. If we gatekeep, we might alienate new fans and blah blah blah. I was wrong. It's time to gatekeep these fandoms. And I'm not saying to the point where people can't bring in, new ideas, new thoughts, because these are modern myths and people have different takes on myths. Some people like the Batman more than Batman the Animated Series. And even though I disagree with them immediately, I'll even tell them to their face they're wrong. I'll still respect their opinion in some way because maybe they just like Joker with bare feet, and the Batman Joker always had bare feet. It was a weird thing. Anyway, that's fine. We can have that discussion. But I think but with Transformers, how a story about transforming robots punching each other and blasting each other with lasers now has to reflect the modern audience, which doesn't exist. The modern audience is a myth, and the Critical Drinker actually has a really good video on this. Um, I advise you to go watch it, where he talks about the modern audience is really just a few spoiled children who had a teacher who was a little too close to them and told them about his dating life or her dating life or Zer's dating life, and then and then got them involved in all this and saying, hey, we need to see this in Star Wars, we need to see this in Star Trek, we need to see this in Batman. No, you don't. These are modern mythologies. They're supposed to be things we can aspire to, or things we're supposed to feel empathy toward or look to. But and that's something that Gene Roddenberry, who created Star Trek, he understood. Now he was kind of he was liberal, and you can see that in that reflected in the original series, reflected in the Next Generation. Definitely these sort of proto-socialist ideas are seen in these shows, but he always had this idea that I want to still make these characters someone that they can aspire to. Well, now they want us to not aspire to them at all. They want us to relate to them. And I can relate to someone that I aspire to be. I can relate to maybe some sort of tragedy with a hero or a story arc in their life. Maybe I can connect to that. I don't have to have Superman be part Cajun for me to connect with him. I can connect with him on a human level. I can aspire to be someone who saves people, who brings hope to the world. And we need to, as fans of these franchises, we need to go forward with this in mind. We need to see, we need to understand, we need to read up, not Wikipedia. We need to actually read the lore. We need to read, like, okay, now you can see it. My Lord of the Rings, Baron and Luthien. I've read the Silmarillion. I've read the Hobbit. I've read multiple of Tolkien's writings. I've listened to his interviews. Bone up on this lore, okay? Because this fight is ongoing. We've had a few victories. Heaven knows we've had a couple of victories. Amazon Studios' Samaritan. That's certainly not a woke superhero movie, and it was certainly better than anything Marvel has put out the last few years. So we've had a few victories. And also, I believe in Superman, I think it's called Saga of the Super Sons, the animated series, or excuse me, the animated film. We saw Superman. They brought back truth, justice, and the American way. He says that to his son, John Kent, in the film. I think that's fantastic. And that was because of us. We need to stop these fake fans who just read the Wikipedia, played a video game, read one comic book, and so they think they know everything. We need to beat them with the lore. I actually literally got into an argument with someone who tried to tell me that the Killing Joke wasn't canon. I don't like Alan Moore. Okay, sure, his Swamp Thing stuff was fine. I don't like Alan Moore as a writer. I think that he is. I think what people like about him is he's not afraid to sort of go to dark places. But I think he is incredibly overrated as a writer. People just like, and also people just like him because he's weird. He worships a snake, right? He's an anarchist, and I didn't like The Killing Joke. Had it been standalone, I might have enjoyed it better, but they made it part of the canon. And this guy tried to argue with me that no, it's not. It wasn't part of canon. And I was like, yes, it is part of canon, especially in the post-crisis universe. Of course it is. And even in the New 52, they have flashbacks to it. So yes, it's canon. But this guy, because he had read somewhere that Moore intended it to be a standalone Elseworld story, that it wasn't canon. And I was like, yes, it is canon, man. Of course it is. And because DC Comics incorporated it. Now, and Pixie Ray points out, we started gatekeeping Dragon Ball Z after Evolution and GT. It worked. There you go. And that is, now we have to be ready to gatekeep anime, because these woke weirdos are coming after anime. I'm a huge My Hero Academia fan. I'm a huge Rising the Shield Hero fan. I'm a huge One Punch Man fan. And not just that, we saw this with Cowboy Bebop. Guys, great job gatekeeping Cowboy Bebop, because Netflix destroyed it, but it got ignored and people just watched the original anime. Fantastic show. Probably my favorite anime of all time. Maybe, I'm not sure. If you put a gun to my head, I'd probably have to say Cowboy Bebop. Death Note. There, even Japan was trying to mess with Death Note with their live action movies, but people in Japan fortunately gatekeeped that, and we have to watch out. We have to be careful, because these infiltrators, they want to ruin our modern myths. Jacob, it's just cartoons. Jacob, it's just books with pictures in it. Why doesn't anyone care? Everyone cares about it. Okay. Pop culture is something that is important because it affects culture later on. Do you think people thought that Lord of the Rings was a classic when it came out? No, of course not. People just thought it was new fiction. It wasn't until years of Tolkien grinding away, of him talking about it, of him releasing notes and doing interviews and people reading it, to realize what a classic they had in their hands. And even Sherlock Holmes, Conan Doyle didn't know he wrote a classic not until years later. You know, if you want to go even further back, you really think Plato's cave, what he thought that would become like a center point in philosophical debate? Of course not. And right now we have an opportunity here where we can protect our modern myths, where we can protect Gotham City, we can protect Star Wars, we can protect Spider-Man, we can protect them all. Stand up. Don't support the corporate overlords. Go back and read classic stuff. So I was asked, well, Jacob, how can we fix this? Go back and read the classics. People who have Disney Plus, they're not watching the new stuff. They're watching the old stuff. Good. Keep that up. Don't watch the new stuff. Don't watch the new Pinocchio. It's garbage. Watch the old Pinocchio. And, don't listen to things are problematic. Give that person a tissue, pat them on the head, and say, well, you can go to sit at the kids' table. That is what you have to do, because these wokesters, they're going to keep on doing this until they've fully taken over all of our favorites, and we cannot let that happen. We have to keep on keeping on. We have to keep staying strong. Now, and one thing we have to do, as we are going into Christmas, we have to also remember that Jesus is the reason for the season. Jesus Christ is your Lord and your Savior, and I hope that this Christmas season you will see him as your Savior. Christians, gatekeep Christmas, gatekeep the rainbow, gatekeep Bible stories. Don't let these woke people, these woke preachers, quote, these woke ministers and weirdos on Twitter who aren't even Christian, gatekeep your own religion to you. You can gatekeep it. And if you go to a church where a pastor is going woke, where he's jumping on the bandwagon, leave. Okay, so that's all I wanted to say about Christmas. Thank you, everyone who came on. Thank you to everyone who was in the chat. I greatly appreciate it. All of you rock. I am under no illusion. I know that not everyone comes just to hear me babble on. You come to support because you love original creators. Now, before I go, I have one more thing. Just as a reminder, I do write novels. So if you are like, oh my gosh, I have to go visit my cousin the day after Christmas, I don't know what to get him, consider getting him one of my novels. So this is Cacophony. It's a paranormal novel that I wrote about a group of demons that are trying to take over a small town, and a team of angels that are sent to stop them. You'll love it. I tried to write it in a way that whether you're Catholic or Protestant, you can enjoy it. I hope that you'll pick it up and give it a try, or buy it for someone you love. Or if you like fantasy, I write fantasy fiction. So these are the first two in a trilogy I'm writing, The Seven Royals. The first book is The Seven Royals, All Good Things. The second book is The Seven Royals, Breaking the Stars. It is about a group of your favorite fairy tale characters who have to come together to defeat an evil mage who has taken over their kingdoms. Third book is on its way. I'm working on it now. So I hope that everyone, you have a very Merry Christmas. You have a Happy New Year. I'll see you on the other side of 2023. And I'll see you next time right here on Studio Jake.